Hello friends! In this video, we will take a look at how young Bobby Fischer dealt with the dragon variation of the Sicilian defense against Bent Larsen. So, Slovenia, 1958. Robert is playing white and sends the king's pawn into battle. Larsen replies with the sharp Sicilian defense. White develops the knight, black occupies the central square e5. Fischer claims the center, a trade follows on the d4 square, an attack on the pawn, and the defensive move knight to c3, simultaneously developing the piece toward the center. And as a result, the dragon variation appears on the board. Larsen remains one of the few stubborn players who do not want to part with the dragon. White's attack develops by itself. Weak chess players overcome grandmasters with it. Once, looking through a chess bulletin, I found that out of every 10 games, white wins about 9, Robert Fischer wrote in his commentary. Meanwhile, he develops the queen's bishop, and here an attempt to disturb him with the jump knight g4 runs into the reply bishop b5, and black suffers major material losses. If black interposes, then using the diagonal pin, white wins a piece. If black blocks with the knight, then white breaks through on c6 and, thanks to the double attack, wins the exchange. Naturally, Larsen did not get caught in this childish trap. He simply prepares kingside castling. Fischer strengthens the center, defending himself from the enemy piece's intentions on the g4 square. And after castling, he played queen d2 to move the king toward the queenside and to develop a terrifying attack on the opposite side of the board. In response to this, Bent completes the development of his cavalry. Fischer plays bishop to c4, preventing the possible central breakthrough d5. Black exchanges on the d4 square and offers a trade of the light-squared bishops. But Bobby is ready to trade only on his own terms. Larsen throws his queen into the zone, and after queenside castling, the exchange on the b3 square gives nothing good, because white captures with the c-pawn. Black cannot create any attack against the pawn structure of white on the queenside. A pawn endgame, of course, is lost for white, but black usually gets checkmated long before the endgame, Robert Fischer writes in his commentary. So in the game, Bent refuses this exchange, pushing the b-pawn forward. Fischer makes a prophylactic move, king to b1. Black attacks the knight, white centralizes. And here it is bad to capture on the d5 square with the knight because white first trades the dark-squared bishops. Then he captures on d5 with tempo, attacking the bishop, and seizes the half-open file. White has an attack not only along the h-file, along the weak dark squares, but also pressure on the backward pawn e7. Taking this variation into account, in the game, Bent Larsen refuses to capture on the d5 square with the knight and takes with the bishop. Fischer strikes with his long-nosed friend, and here, black already had to capture precisely with the knight. After taking with the pawn, black can eat this pawn. Yes, white regains the pawn on b4, but a complicated position with mutual chances arises. But in the game, Bent Larsen tries to play for the win, so he avoids such simplification in favor of the move rook to c8. Now, black will never be able to capture this bishop. I felt that the job was done. If I do not spoil anything, I have won dozens of blitz games from similar positions, and always by the same scheme. I will open the h-file. Check, checkmate, Robert Fischer wrote in his commentary. Here, Larsen would like to play queen to b5 and push the a-pawn forward. But black's problem is that white simply takes on the a7 square. Therefore, black is forced to waste time on the defensive move rook to c7. Fischer uses the hook pawn on the g6 square in order to open lines on the king side. And the move h5 does not help much here, because white in any case plays g4 at the cost of sacrificing even several pawns, opens lines in this part of the board, and conducts a terrifying attack on the black monarch. So Larsen plays queen to b5 to conduct his counterplay. Fischer blows up the king side. If black captures the pawn on the h5 square with the pawn, then white plays g4, and after the capture, white move rook on the g1. White opens the maximum number of lines on the king side. In the case where black captures the pawn on the h5 square with the knight, white eliminates the main defender of the weak dark squares. Then he attacks the knight, gives a check, and plays g5, at the very least winning a piece. The point is that the knight on h5 does not help. White captures with the rook, then plays g6, using the diagonal pin. A mate in 1 is threatened. Black is forced to take precisely with the h-pawn, but then white breaks through on the g6 square, gives a check, and delivers mate along the g-file. Taking these beautiful lines into account, in the game, Bent Larsen refuses to capture the pawn on the h5 square, continuing his counterplay on the queen side. Fischer captures on the g6 square and pushes the pawn along the g-file. Black counterattacks. White attacks the knight. Since after the exchange of the dark-squared bishops, Fischer plans to play queen to h2 and deliver mate, black tries to block the h-file, but Robert sacrifices the rook on the h5 square. Larsen should have reduced the number of fighting units on the board, then taken the rook. Although white still has a dangerous attack on the king side, black at least has material advantage and some chances to survive. In the game, however, black decides to immediately grab the rook on the h5 square. Fischer drives the pawn forward, attacking the pawn on f7. If black tries to block the diagonal for the bishop, then white captures on the f7 square. Then he trades the dark-squared bishops and develops a decisive attack in this part of the board. So in the game, Larsen blocks the diagonal for the dark-squared bishop, avoiding the exchange of the main defender of the weak dark squares on the king side. Fischer captures on the f7 square. Black's king tries to hide behind the white pawn as behind a living shield. The American grandmaster clears the d-file, setting his sights on the pawn on d6. If in this position black tries to counterattack the queen side, then white captures on d6, and on the interposition sacrifices the queen. Then he captures with the rook. Black must block again. But then white promotes a new queen and checkmates the black king. White's bishops simply tear the enemy monarch apart. And in view of this line, in the game, Larsen refuses the move a4, pushing forward the attacked pawn instead. Capturing with the bishop is bad because of the strike on the c2 square, so Fischer takes on the d5 square with the pawn. Black still grabs the pawn on the f7 square. Fischer attacks the rook. After the retreat, he plays bishop to g5, and here Larsen transfers the queen to the b7 square, giving back the exchange in order to somehow protect his monarch. Fischer captures on the f6 square, plays d7, cutting off the queen's heir. A move with the rook to d8 was also played, but after the reply queen to d6, on move 31, Bent Larsen admitted defeat. The point is that after the interposition bishop to e7, mate comes to the black king. And if the king runs to the g7 square, then white gives a check along the g-file, then captures on the f6 square with a decisive mating attack. A true killing of the dragon was performed by the future 11th world champion, Bobby Fischer. Support the video with likes. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. See you soon.